I am experiencing serious writer's block with a few of the videos that I'm working on. So I'm working on a video on aging in place, as well as a video about my trip to the Netherlands. And I have a few other videos floating around, but those are kind of the two that I'm like, well, I should probably work on those. But I'm having some writer's block, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to look through my B-roll because I have a ton of B-roll. As of today, I have 4,921 clips. So I'd like to go through some of those, show you some of my favorites, because some of these might never show up in videos just because there's so much and I don't know when I'm going to use what. But I thought it could be interesting to take a look at the things I've captured so far. Okay, so we're going to start with the very first B-roll clip. This is literally just a clip of of one of those little libraries. This is in a rural area on Vancouver Island. And I thought it was interesting because normally you would think to find one of these in a neighborhood, like where you have people walking by all of the time. So I don't know how much traffic this little library gets, but I thought it was cute to find this in a rural area. And maybe it actually does get used pretty well. I mean, we walked down there. Again, this is another spot on Vancouver Island. This is my second B-roll clip, and I've got another little library here. This one I think was sponsored by like Rotary or something, and it's right at the mailboxes. This is a great spot to put something like this because you know people have to go to that spot. I also thought it was interesting because I'm from Alberta, where at least southern Alberta, we don't get a ton of rain. But in this area on Vancouver Island, they've got their mailboxes covered by a little roof. We don't have that here because we don't get as much wetness. I thought Cowichan Bay was kind of an interesting spot because you've got all of these really cute little shops, but the sidewalks are surprisingly narrow and the car traffic is like actually insane. So it was really cute and awesome, but also like really busy with cars. I was shocked. I also thought all the houseboats in the area were super cute and an interesting thing because again, I'm from Alberta. We don't like people don't live in houseboats in my town. Another interesting thing being on Vancouver Island for a little bit was the ferries, traveling by ferry. That was never something I'd done. I haven't spent a ton of time on boats, and I thought it was kind of cool to see this different mode of transportation. This goes to show that there are different tools to do different jobs depending where you're going and what the terrain is like, what the environment is like. These are important things to consider when you're thinking about transportation. Should I take a car, a bike, a scooter, a train? These are all things to think about. Something I have taken a ton of footage of is art, because you find art in some interesting places and each place often has its own thing. In Parksville, BC, I found these sandcastles. They have like a full festival for sandcastles, and they're not even castles, they're like carvings. It's incredible. Where I'm from, at Lake Louise, we have ice sculptures that go up every year that people do every year. So it was cool to see something different. These ones are made of sand, and that was really cool to see. Here's another bit on transportation. My personal favorite way to travel is by seaplane. The very first time I went out to Vancouver Island, my aunt told me I've got to take the seaplane to get there. So from Vancouver, I flew Calgary to Vancouver. Then from Vancouver, I took a seaplane with Harbour Air and I flew to Vancouver Island. It was absolutely incredible. So I've taken a lot of shots of planes. I think it's fun. It's cool to see the world from up there. And be in something small, just like going over, I don't know, it just makes me so happy to travel by seaplane. So these are a couple seaplanes that we took when we went to the Great Bear Rainforest, which was another very cool thing, which I've got some clips of, which I'll show you now as I'm talking. As I'm talking, you're seeing it. Pretty cool stuff. At some point in the future, I want to do a video or maybe a series of videos talking about protected landscapes, because I do think that that's an important part of our urban fabric based on how we build parks, where we put them, how we protect them, what they're meant for. And I've done a video in the past about that I collaborated with Not Just Transit on. Yeah, I'd like to talk more about that, especially because I have a lot of cool footage from the Great Bear Rainforest that I think would be cool to share. Okay, and last note on the Great Bear Rainforest, here's a picture that I got of the bears. I was pretty pleased with this one. I guess you could call me a photographer. Something I thought was really cool in Victoria was that they had these covered bike racks with some maintenance tools, some simple stuff that you can use to fix your bike up, tighten a few things if you need to. I thought that was really convenient because it's a really cheap thing to implement, but I think the benefits are huge for people. So I thought that was fantastic. Okay, speaking of Victoria, this is the first place where I really started to get some really cool architecture shots. I've gotten a lot of really cool ones since then, but the British Columbian Parliament building is something I thought was super, super cool. So I got a lot of interesting shots of it, spent the day around downtown Victoria. And I gotta say, like, if you're into architecture, this is a place to visit. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, and I'd love to learn more about it. Okay, next thing, the cycling in Victoria. This was super, super cool, and something I wish we had more of in Calgary. I think we're getting better in Calgary. I have a lot of hope. I'm a hopeful person, and I think that it's up to us to make these changes. And I'm sure there are spaces in Victoria where it is kind of tacked on and it doesn't work very well. But this area, downtown Victoria, I thought they did it really well, and that was great to see. Okay, moving to a different town on Vancouver Island. Now, we're going to talk about Duncan for a second, because this is something that I thought was super, super cool that Duncan has done. They have this thing called the totem tour, and so you see these big, tall totem poles, and they're made by local people and a variety of people, and then set out around the town, around downtown Duncan. And you can go on this little guided tour. You just follow these little markers on the sidewalk. And as you go, you find all sorts of different totems made by different artists representing different things. And I thought it was a really cool way to get people moving around the city and seeing different things, seeing different shops, seeing artwork, and local history. So huge kudos. That was, whoever thought of that, whoever implemented that, like, I love that. So then, as I'm getting ready to leave, I take the ferry from Vancouver Island back to Vancouver. And I thought it was kind of interesting looking back on this B-roll, seeing how much space is dedicated to cars in this transportation across the water. It was kind of wild to see. And I think ideally, in an ideal situation, you wouldn't have to support so many cars going on the ferry. You would be able to transfer more people and less metal. But of course, I don't know much about this transportation. I don't know where these people are going and what their access to transit is like between here and there. But it would be something to look into and something to learn a little bit more about, to see how much more efficient we can be with getting people around to the places that they'd like to go. Going through this footage, I'm realizing that I went straight from Vancouver Island, where everything is lush and green and mountainous, and then I went straight to a family reunion on the Alberta prairies. And just seeing the contrast between these clips is fantastic. Both are beautiful, and that's why I love living in Calgary. If I go east, I see the prairies. If I go west, I see the mountains. It's a fantastic place to live, and I've got a whole variety of beauty right at my back door. So it's interesting, once I get back to Calgary, I am taking footage of things that are a little bit more mundane to me. It's just kind of your average street and your average park. But then you find some interesting things around the city, like the neighborhood of Seton, something that I'm going to make a video on in the future. Now, this area is going to be very dense. It's going to have a lot more apartment buildings. It's got a high school. It has a YMCA, a library, a hospital, lots of places for people to work. It's got offices. And it's going to eventually have 2 train stations. Remember that green line I keep talking about? Boy, someday we will have that. But the problem is that it is a someday thing. We don't have the green line yet. And the people who move into these areas are expecting to be able to take transit because, well, they live in an apartment building and the city says we're going to have 2 train stations right there for you. But in the meantime, they do have buses. Yes, they do have buses, but trains are cooler. There's something about a train that just makes you want to hop on, you know? But these people don't yet have the same transit access that they will at some point have. And so, of course, right now they have cars. So the streets here are littered with cars. It's very busy with cars. And they're just waiting, I guess, for someday the train will be built and they'll have access to that. I'm sure I will talk more about that in the future. I want to do a full video on the area. But for now, that should hopefully that holds you over with a little bit of frustration that we can share together. But I thought that was interesting. Someday it's going to be a fantastic area, but right now there are some frustrations, some irks I have with it. We'll get there. We'll get through it together. I will say though, the hospital is one of my favorite buildings in the city. I think the mosaic thing that they did on the walls was a pretty great solution to what would otherwise be just this big thing of concrete. Also, I've never really been a transit girly. I've always had a car ever since I had my license. I've had a car, but then I start taking transit and I hear people say like, nobody takes transit. People take transit. I've seen people take transit. Like, it's pretty busy sometimes. Okay, so we're leading up to the end here. So I've got two more things that I want to show you. First is this library, this public library. This is the Fish Creek Public Library. I always thought it was so cool. It's this big pyramid. It's interesting. It's not that good looking inside. It's kind of outdated, but it's a very cool library. I love the Calgary Public Library. Last thing is my favorite place in the city. Let me tell you about Heritage Park. Okay, we don't have time. Let me tell you about the trolley or the tram or the streetcar, whatever you feel is the right word to use for this machine. Let me tell you about that. So this is one of the actual streetcars that the city of Calgary used to run. And I think that is so cool. And I feel so special that I can ride on it. Now, the route it takes is basically just from the Heritage Park parking lot up to the entrance of the park, which is pretty cool. But I wish that they would run the trolley down Heritage Drive from Heritage Park to the Heritage LRT station. This is one of my greatest hopes and desires in life. If I was in charge of all things, that's what we would do. I think it would be so cool, because how cool would it be for you to get picked up by an antique streetcar and taken up to a museum? What? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Why are we not doing this? I know why we're not doing this. You have you have to send out a survey and you have to deal with, well, now we have to change this right of way and we have to do that. And it's a busy road. And what's the construction going to be like? Do you want to run an antique with traffic? If not, well, how are you going to have it a separate right of way? All of this stuff. I get it. I get it. I get it. I just think it would be super, super cool. And honestly, I think it's worth the trouble. We should go for it. We should go for it. But alas, next time I'll probably talk something about like the train or the boat that you also find inside the park. Oh my goodness, Heritage Park is my favorite place in my city. Anyways, that's it for today. That's going to do that. I have thought things out. We only got to 500 B-roll clips. So, I mean, expect more of these in the future, I guess, for those moments where I'm not vibing, I'm not feeling it, like it's not getting inside my head and out of my head and onto the page and then into a video. I have a few very cool things coming up. Let me know if there was any B-roll in this clip that you're like, excuse me, I'd like to hear more about that. Let me know, put it down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for 284 YouTube subscribers. I guess people better start showing me some respect now. I guess, yeah, I'm a YouTuber. Anyways. Yeah, have a great week. Like, eat your veggies, stay in school, or don't. Like, do whatever is going to fulfill you and make the world a better place. Yeah, bye.